One of the most common uses of the JavaScript API is the ability to filter the embedded visualization. Here we have a visualization that we have previously embedded into this web page. We have that switching views functionality, but we also have the functionality to filter in a variety of ways. This creates a really nice effect where your end user is interacting with the web page and not that built-in Tableau functionality. To get started with this tutorial, make sure you have your HTML and JavaScript files from the previous lesson that you ended with, or make sure that you download the .zip from this web page, extract it, and rename Lesson 3 Start to Tutorial. Make sure you rename the JavaScript file and not the HTML file. Let's go ahead and edit our HTML file, either the one that you ended last lesson with or the lesson 3 start.html. What I'd like to do is create a new button that allows me to filter to just books on my visualization. Just to keep our interface nice and clean, let's go ahead and copy that switching views nav header, and we'll retitle it filtering and selecting marks. We can copy any of these buttons to make our lives a little easier. And what we want to do is call that show only books. Instead of calling the switch view function that we created in the last tutorial, we're going to have this call a function that we're going to create later. That function is going to be called show only. What it's going to do is it's going to choose which dimension we want to filter, in this case category, and which value we want to filter to. So for the dimension category, we want to show only those items that have the value of book. Hit save, and let's open up our tutorial.js and add that new function show only. Create our functions show only, and as we did in our HTML, we gave it 2 arguments. The first one is the name of the dimension. You could call this dimension name. I'm going to call it filter name, and you'd like to get the values. What you're going to do first is make sure you're pointing at the active sheet, because in the JavaScript API, you can only actually affect the sheet that is being shown. Luckily, you can do that with viz.getWorkbook.getActiveSheet. Will give us the currently viewed sheet, and we'll store that in a variable called sheet. Now what we need to do is to call a function that is a function inside of a sheet object, and it's called apply filter async. This takes 3 arguments. The first is the dimension that we're going to be filtering on. The second is the values, this values object that we're passing in. Actually, in this case, would be a string. And the last is a string that you tell it how to filter. In this case, we'll call it replace. Now, there are only a set few types of filter types. So this last argument, you can consider the filter type. Replace is one of them. Replace means that no matter what you're showing for this specific filter, so no matter which categories you are currently showing, only show me the values that I'm telling you to show. The use of replace will become clear when we use it and when we explore a couple more types of filter types. So let's go ahead and close the bracket for that filter there. Save the .js and let's run our HTML file. We have our new little header here for filtering and selecting marks. And we have that new button, Show Only Books. If we click it, there we go. We see only the category book. That's how you filter on a sheet. But let me refresh this view, switch to our dashboard sheet, and click Show Only Books. Notice that nothing happens. In fact, if I go to Inspect Element, Console, you'll notice uncaught type error. The object has no method apply filter async. Why is this happening? Well, you actually, if you're looking, if the active sheet is a dashboard instead of just a normal sheet by itself, you have to filter a little bit differently. You have to go deeper past the worksheet level into an individual sheet on a dashboard and filter that. So let's go ahead and show how you might go one step further and check to see if we're looking at a dashboard or a normal sheet and filter appropriately. I'm going to go back to that show only function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we're pointing at a worksheet type before I do this type of filter. So I'll say if sheet.getSheetType, another built-in function to a sheet object, equals worksheet, then I would like to do what I had previously done with sheet.apply filter async. Now, if we are pointing at a dashboard, sheet.getSheetType is going to return the string dashboard. So what we want to do is we want to say, in that case, if it's not a worksheet, what we need to do is first grab the worksheet array. Now what I mean by this is that if the sheet type is a dashboard, it's going to have many worksheets inside of it. And those worksheets are going to be given to us in an array if we call sheet.getWorksheets. This may seem confusing at first, this difference between a sheet and a worksheet. And once you start building out your views, you'll see that the difference is a worksheet is a sheet inside of a dashboard, basically. So if we are in a dashboard, first we grab the worksheet array, and then maybe, depending on how you want to handle this, maybe you'll loop through all of the sheets and filter them. So I'm going to create a loop here, start at 0, and go all the way to worksheet array.length, how many sheets we have, increment by 1. And for each of those, I'm going to say worksheet array sub I. And now I can call apply filter async. I can do it just the same as I had done before. Close that for loop. Make sure we close the else as well. And now we should be good to go for all of our contingencies, whether we're looking at a normal sheet or a dashboard sheet. So let's reload here. See if our books still works. It does. Let's reload once more. Go to our dashboard type, and now click show only books. And now you notice that both of the sheets on this view have filtered correctly. Let me return to my JavaScript file here and make one last point here about that loop we just created. If you actually had a global filter on any of these sheets, or that is, if this filter was global, created that way inside of Tableau Desktop, you wouldn't need to loop through all of the sheets on the dashboard. You could just have applied it to one of them. The global filter will handle applying it to all of them. The point of this tutorial lesson today is to show you all of the different options you get using this apply filter async function. I'm going to show you a different way to call it, and that's not showing only, but also show. So let's create a new function. We'll call it also show. It's going to still take in the filter name and the values. In fact, so much about this function is the same. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to paste it in there. The idea is that, just like we did before, we want to create a variable called sheet. Inside of it, we want to store the result of viz.getWorkbook.getActiveSheet. We're going to check if it's a worksheet type. If it is, we'll just apply the filter to it. Otherwise, we know it's a dashboard and we'll loop through all the sheets on that dashboard. The difference, however, is that instead of the filter type replace, we're going to call it with the filter type add. Make sure you get the capitalized add there, just like we had in replace. An add type of filter I like to think of as similar to a multi-select quick filter inside of Tableau Desktop. Whatever value was there previously is still going to be there when you click a new checkbox in a multi-select filter. That's in contrast to a replace filter, which I like to think is more like a single select filter. If whatever value you had previously, you click a new radio on that quick filter, and the previous values go away, you're left with only the filter that you selected. Now we created that also show function. Let's go ahead and save our file. We'll come to lesson 3 start, our HTML file, or whatever it's going to be called in your case. And we'll grab our, create a new button here. Now to create a new button, I'm just going to copy our show only books button and paste it, and I'll rename it something different. What I'm going to call it is also show certificates, dolls, electronics, and books. Now that button has to call a different function. It's going to call that also show function that we created just moments ago. It's still going to apply to category, but it's going to have to call something different for the values. You may be wondering, what are we going to tell the apply filter async or the also show function? How are we going to tell it to filter to all of these? Well, the great thing about apply filter async, and therefore our also show and show only functions, is that they take not only a string, but they'll also take an array of strings and will apply it to all of those values inside of that array. Let's create an array here. Inside of it, we will say the first thing is called gift certificates. Now make sure that each of your items inside of this array is surrounded by single quotes. That's just because if you have double quotes, you'll be closing this double quoted function call. So gift certificates, close it with a single quote, comma, open, doll, electronics, and blocks. Now we need to close our array with that bracket. We'll hit save, and we'll go ahead and run this in Chrome. Now, just to demonstrate a little bit easier how this works, I'm going to switch to a line chart. I'm going to show only books. And now if I also show that button, you'll see that we have gift certificates, dolls, electronics, blocks, and we still have that books, even though that's not included in that function call. So this is working exactly how we want it to work here. And there's one more type of filter I'd like to show using that apply filter async. Let's go to our tutorial.js. We'll actually just copy also a function also show here. And in this case, instead of also show, we'll call it don't show. It works exactly the same as our last two functions, but instead of the add filter type, we'll do a remove filter type. Save our JS, go to our HTML, grab one of the previous buttons we created, create a new one. We'll call don't show this time. And I'm going to call it still on category, but I'm going to call don't show gift certificates. Now we only called also show with an array, but just note that also show could have been called with a single string, and show only and don't show could have also been called with arrays. So it's flexible in that way. But in this case, I'll just say don't show only gift certificates. Let's make sure we title our button a little bit differently. So we'll say don't show gift certificates. We'll save our HTML and we'll run it in Chrome. So gift certificates here are these pink values here. If we click don't show gift certificates, they disappear and our button works. So we built out a variety of ways to use apply filter async. Now let's say our end user is clicking away, clicking on different buttons that call apply filter async, and now they want to clear that filter. Now they could hit revert, but that'll revert all of them. What if we just want to clear one function? Well, there's a function called clear filter async. It works pretty similar, except for it will just clear whatever values we've passed into it. Once again, I'm just going to copy a previous function we've created because that logic we've created for checking if it's a worksheet or a dashboard, that's working really nice for us, so I just want to copy paste that logic. Difference here, however, is since we're just clearing the filter, we only need the name of the filter. And what we'll do here is instead of apply filter async, we'll just call clear filter async, and we'll pass in the name of the filter. Let's copy paste that clear filter async and replace the apply filter async with that for the dashboard situation. Hit save. Once again, we need to create a button that actually calls that. So we will copy our previous button and we'll give it a name, clear the category filter. Once again, we only need to pass it in one argument, so we'll erase that. And we'll make sure to call what we just created, the clear filter function. Hit save, once again, run in Chrome. And let's do a few things. Let's maybe go to our dashboard and show only books, also show gift certificates, don't show gift certificates, and then we'll hit clear category filter, and notice we're back to the original, which is all of our values. Now there's one point to make here. When we say clear the filter, we're saying that we are going to revert that filter to back how it is from the desktop, the workbook that we created. So if you have category on the filter shelf in desktop, then clear category filter will revert it back to what you have for that filter. Whereas if you don't have anything there, clear category filter will just remove all values and we'd be looking at a blank screen here. Something to keep in mind when you are building your dashboards in Tableau Desktop. And that pretty much covers it for categorical filtering. Now, what do I mean by categorical filtering? It's not just because we're calling it on a dimension called category. It's that nature of the filter where we have a list of values and we're going to choose which of those categories we're going to show or anything like that. Now, there's a variety of types of filters. There's date filters, numerical filters in Tableau. We're going to cover some of those in the tutorial video called Advanced Filtering. For the rest of our video, we're going to be talking about selecting marks. Now, why is that lumped in here with categorical filtering? It's because it works almost exactly the same. So let's go back to our tutorial JavaScript file here. And it works so similarly to filtering, selecting marks that is, that I can just grab my don't show function there, copy paste it down here at the bottom, and we'll go ahead and make sure to call this our select marks function. Once again, it's going to take the name of the dimension. Not exactly a filter name, but it's okay if we leave that there. We'll tell it what values, grab the sheet and check if it's a worksheet and so on and so forth. But instead of calling apply filter async, we're going to call select marks async. Always remember to make sure you get the first letter of a new word in a function in Tableau capitalized, or else you'll get an error. Select mark async. We'll do it with the filter name. We'll call values, and what we'll do is we'll do a replace type of select. Oh, make sure we let's grab the whole select marks async here and replace the apply filter async here. So we get select marks async for the dashboard situation and for the worksheet situation. We'll go ahead and save that and make sure we call it in our HTML file. I'm going to grab this show only books button here, but it doesn't matter which one you grab. What we'll do is we'll call select marks. We're going to do it on category. In this case, I'm going to select all of the gift certificates. No, I'll do electronics here. Let's select all of the electronics marks. And what we'll do is we'll call that select electronics marks. Save that, run it in Chrome. And now if we choose select marks, electronics marks, we see there that we're not filtering to the electronics marks, but we're selecting them. Now that's all the only example I'm going to show with select marks. And the reason is because the logic is exactly the same as filtering, categorical filtering. I could, instead of passing in a single value, I could have passed in an array of values. I could have, instead of choosing replace, I could have done an add or a remove. In fact, I even have a different function similar to clear filter async, and it's called clear selected marks async. So all of those different options you get in filtering, you also get in selecting marks. And that pretty much covers it for selecting marks and categorical filtering. Now, a lot of you may be wondering at this point, why every time we call one of these, all the function names have that word async at the end. And that's because of the nature of this API is that it's asynchronous programming. Whether you understand what that means or not, our next tutorial video will cover what that means and how do you handle that? How do you take advantage of the fact that it's an asynchronous programming environment? Hope to see you there. Bye.